In this podcast, you'll learn whenever to use words like whenever, however, whatever, whichever, wherever, whoever, and whosever. So, whoever listens to this week's podcast will avoid confusion with these words wherever you are in the world and whatever you use English for. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello, and if you're a new listener to the podcast, and if you're not, you're very, very welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name is Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, we're going to help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and it's really good to see you. I'm excited about podcasting again with you this week.
Me too. Wherever, whenever, doesn't really matter. I always enjoy podcasting.
So these words can be confusing. However, whatever, whichever, whenever, wherever, and whoever. Let's start with whatever. What does it mean, Reza, and when should we use it?
Well, think of the keyword. The keyword is what, and we've added ever. With all of these words, what plus ever, which plus ever. So it means it doesn't matter what. In other words, anything at all. It doesn't matter is no importa. It doesn't matter what. Lo que sea. Can you think of an example?
Well, from today, actually, we're recording this podcast this week in Reza's flat, and as soon as I arrived, Reza said, "Hi, Craig, make yourself at home, and please take whatever you want from the fridge if you feel hungry." Reza said, "Whatever you want," so now Reza's fridge is empty.
No, that's not true.
Whatever you do, don't tell Reza. Whatever you do. Have you heard that from your mother sometimes, Reza? Whatever you do, don't touch the cakes.
It's a very parenty thing to say, isn't it? Whatever you do, not this. A word which is very similar to what in English is which. It's not exactly the same. And we've also got the word whichever. So whichever means it doesn't matter which. Or any one at all. If you have a choice, the word which is generally to do with a choice. Whereas what isn't a specific choice, which is a choice. So it's cualquiera. For example, Craig, let's go to the cinema and see a film. What film do you want to see?
Well, I don't mind. Whichever film you want to watch is okay by me. Anyone, it doesn't matter which. Another example, Reza, here's your coffee, and there's some biscuits for you. There's Jaffa cakes, McVitie's digestives.
Oh, Craig, I see that there are 2 cups of coffee. Which one should I take?
Take whichever one you like. There's no sugar in them. Take whichever. And take whichever biscuit you like.
I'll take them all.
Yeah, I know you will. Reza does that whenever he comes to my flat. Whenever, at any time at all. So the word when, I'm sure you know. Whenever, it doesn't matter when. If you're a Spanish speaker, cuando sea. Whenever you like. Can you think of an example?
You could invite someone to your home with an open invitation by saying, "Come and visit us whenever you like. We're usually at home." Whenever you like. It doesn't matter when. Just come.
Do you know, Reza, whenever I clean my car, it always rains. The same day. Whenever I clean the windows, it always rains, makes them dirty.
So it doesn't matter what day of the week, if it's morning or afternoon, the weekend or the weekdays, whenever.
And whenever I forget my umbrella, it always rains. Whenever I phone Reza, he never answers.
Yeah, that's true. I'm always very slow to answer. Yeah. So you can see a pattern here, right? You won't be very surprised at the next word. Wherever means, you should have guessed by now, it doesn't matter where. Or donde sea, if you speak Spanish. In other words, any place at all. For example, if you're very deeply in love with someone, it might be nice to say to them, wherever you are, I'll always be thinking of you. So it doesn't matter where they are, whether they're with you or not, in this country, another, wherever you are. I'll always be thinking of you.
In my younger days, before I settled in Spain, if you settle somewhere, that means you feel good in a place and you stay there. So before I came over here to Spain, wherever I go or wherever I went, I always felt like a foreigner. I feel at home in Spain, but when I left the UK and I started to go to different countries, wherever I went, I always felt like a foreigner. Our next word is however. However, which means any way at all. It doesn't matter how. If you're a Spanish speaker, you could translate it as cualquier forma or de cualquier manera or como sea. However. Now, you may be thinking, hang on, Craig, wait a minute. Doesn't however mean sin embargo? Well, that's one way to use it. That's one meaning of it, but that's not the meaning we're focusing on today. We can use however to mean sin embargo as a connector. And if you want to find out more about that use, go to inglespodcast.com/55. And in that episode, we spoke more about however with its use as sin embargo. But that's not for today. For today, we mean any way at all. It doesn't matter how. Let's give you an example. Can you think of one, Reza?
What about this? However you try to explain these words, I still can't understand them.
That's what our audience is probably thinking, aren't you?
So that however there is the meaning of it doesn't matter how. Como sea. It doesn't matter how.
Have you noticed, Reza, that you can earn money, but it never seems to be enough? You always want more. However much money we earn, it's never enough. Do you agree?
I agree. It doesn't matter how much.
Next, we have whoever. So who, quien, any person at all. It doesn't matter who. So to translate to Spanish, you might say quien quiera, or cualquier persona, or quien sea. Whoever you ask, you'll get the same answer, for example. It doesn't matter who you ask, the answer will always be the same. Whoever you ask, you'll get the same answer.
Imagine I see that Craig has had his flat painted.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, not going to happen soon.
Not going to happen soon, my friend.
You've had enough of reformas for a while. Me too.
Yeah.
So someone's painted it, but I don't know who painted it. But I tell you what, they did very, very professional work. I could say, Craig, whoever painted this flat did a fantastic job.
I think that example's more appropriate for you because at the moment we're recording this in Reza's flat and I'm looking around at the lovely walls, the fresh paint. They really did a good job. Whoever painted this flat did a fantastic job.
So it doesn't matter who. We don't know who, but we're just saying the important thing is it's a good job. Craig, there's another word which could cause problems, but it shouldn't if you follow the logic, and that is whosever. Let me spell it. WHOSEVER. So we've had how plus ever, what plus ever, who plus ever, etc. So instead of who, we've got whose, the possessive. You'll know the word whose, like, whose book is this? Yeah, well, whose chair is that? Whose. Of who. Possessive. So you can also stick ever at the end of that. So whosever means belonging to any person at all, or it doesn't matter whose. Not it doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter whose. De quien sea, it would be in Spanish. This one is more used, I would say, in spoken English than written English.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's more colloquial, isn't it?
Yeah. For example, whosever wallet that is there lying on the back seat of the bus, they can claim it tomorrow at the lost property office. So I don't know whose it is. So whosever wallet that is, doesn't matter. Any citizen can go and claim it at the lost property office.
And imagine Reza's got a dilemma. He's thinking about making a decision and he asks my advice. He might be silly to do so, but he might ask my advice, and he might ask the advice of another person, maybe his mum, for example. So I might say to Reza, think carefully. Whosever advice you take, think carefully before you decide. So it doesn't matter if you take my advice or your mum's. Whosever advice you take, just make a good decision. Think carefully.
Now, there's another word which you really won't hear much. You might read it in old literature, so we better explain it to avoid complications or confusion, and that is the word whosoever. I better spell that. WHOSOEVER. Whosoever. So it's not the same as whosever, and it's not the same as whoever. It's whosoever. But really, it's just an archaic and old-fashioned variation of whoever. It means the same as whoever, but it's a bit more old-fashioned.
So you wouldn't say it was for more emphasis? You think it's more or less the same meaning, just not as used as much these days?
Yes, although it does seem to give more emphasis as well, though, doesn't it? It is more emphatic than whoever, but it does sound a little bit old-fashioned at the same time,
definitely.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a true example. My grandmother on my mother's side really loved to quote the Bible.
Did she know the Bible well?
Virtually back to front. Yeah, from memory. Yeah. She could quote it at will. That means name any chapter, verse, and she could tell you.
Impressive.
So she knew, boy, oh boy, she knew quite a few quotes. Well, one of her favorites, and it's one that's stuck in my mind because she said it so often, is John chapter 3, verse 6. And it uses this word, whosoever. So Bible, very kind of old-fashioned, even archaic use of language. And it's the following. And maybe it's very good advice if you're considering following a life of religion. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, that's very old-fashioned English. It basically means God loved the world so much that he gave his only Son that he had. So this word begotten means given to you. The only son that he had. We can't say son that was born because we're talking about Jesus, so it's no ordinary son here, right? And whosoever, so it doesn't matter who. And then believeth, has something happened? Have I got a speech impediment? Believeth?
Believes.
What's this believeth at the end? It's old-fashioned English, yeah? So people used to say believeth instead of believes. That's old-fashioned. But that's what's written in the King James Bible, which is still often used today in churches.
So in what situation would your granny or grandmother use that quote or say that quote to you or anyone?
If you got any doubts, any problems, any difficulty in life, doesn't really matter. Do you believe in God and his son Jesus and the gospel? If you do, you're going to have everlasting life. In other words, you're going to heaven when you die. So I really wouldn't worry too much about things. Believe in God, believe in Jesus, and you're going to go to heaven. That's the basic message there, I think. Doesn't matter who you are. Whosoever believeth. It doesn't matter who. You've been the worst assassin, robber, rapist in the world. Doesn't matter. If you repent and now you believe in Jesus, whosoever, you're going to heaven. That's the message there. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just reporting the message from my granny.
And you can read this quotation in the show notes. One thing to notice is that his, referring to God, has a capital letter, capital H, and Son has a capital S because we're speaking about Jesus Christ. So just one thing to notice. And of course, God is also with a capital G. We can also use for emphasis these WH words, WH like who, when, where, etc., with ever, to ask very emphatic questions. And when we do this, we stress ever. Let me give you an example. Now, as you know, teachers are not usually rich people. We don't earn a lot of money. So I might say to a colleague, however will you manage to live on such a small teacher's salary? However will you manage to pay the bills? I'm stressing the ever, and I'm using however to give emphasis to my question. How is it possible to live on this amount of money? However will you manage to do it? Hey, Reza, have you gone absolutely mad, Reza? Whatever are you doing? We're recording a podcast and you're making silly noises and taking the paper, throwing the papers around. Whatever are you doing?
I'm sorry, Craig, I forgot to take my tablets.
Yeah.
I should just keep taking the tablets.
Keep taking the medicine. So I want to ask Reza what he's doing, but obviously I'm a little bit annoyed, a little bit concerned about Reza's mental state. So I used whatever to stress the question. And again, stressing and emphasizing the ever. Reza, whatever are you doing making so much noise during our broadcast?
Craig, you're reminding me a little bit of my mum when I was a kid and I didn't keep my room very, very well organized. She used to say to me, young man, because that's what mums say to boys when they're annoyed with them. Young man, whenever are you going to tidy your room? She could have just said when, but this whenever, the emphasis of ever is like, oh, really, I need to know when because this is just getting annoying now.
What does tidy mean?
To tidy is to make something organized and neat and look nice and everything in its place.
Did you have a messy room when you were younger?
Pretty messy, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty messy. Well, you can never please mums, can you? It doesn't matter how often you tidy it.
True. So we can use these words for emphasis, especially in questions. We can also use these words when we're using vague language. Now, vague language we have spoken about before, and it's language that's not very precise, not very accurate. Let me give you an example. Reza, we're meeting tomorrow and I'm coming here to your flat. What time shall I get to your place? What time shall I get here?
Whenever. I'll be at home all day. Whenever.
Doesn't matter what time.
Doesn't matter what.
Okay. So there, whenever means it doesn't matter. You choose, you decide, it doesn't matter to me. Whenever.
Craig, I've already made some notes for the next podcast. Shall I send you the notes I have?
Yeah, whatever. I'll be doing my own research too. So there I'm using whatever to be vague because it's not so important that I get Reza's notes, but if he wants to send them, he can. So yeah, whatever. Whatever you like. And you can use this also when you don't really care about the actions of the other person. Whatever. Do what you want, whatever.
As well as showing that you don't care, you can use the word whatever to show that you're actually annoyed. So when I was a mum...
When you were a mum? And when
we need a whole episode for that story, don't we?
When did you have the sex change?
Yeah, we'll do that as a complete episode. That's going to be a good one. When I was a mum, we're going to get a lot of listeners.
Do you have any photos?
All will be revealed in another episode.
Whatever.
No, I wasn't a mum. But I meant to say, I spoke about my mum earlier telling me to tidy up my room by saying, whenever are you going to tidy up this room? Another thing my mum would say to me is, you'd better do your homework, young man, now, before it gets too late. And I'd be annoyed that she's doing the homework, tidy your room. I'd say, whatever, to show that I'm annoyed or like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not listening to you. So whatever can show annoyance here. You don't like somebody telling you what you have to do or you just don't want to cooperate with them. You say whatever.
Earlier we spoke about whosoever, the archaic form of whoever. We also have the word whatsoever. So it's one word, not separate words, whatsoever, whatsoever. And we can use whatsoever as an emphatic form of whatever. And we often use it after a negative phrase. For example, he seems to have no idea whatsoever. So I'm emphasizing the fact that he has no idea. Imagine there's a student who has no idea. and he's about to take an exam. He won't pass the exam. He's got no idea about grammar whatsoever. Can you think of another example?
Another example to emphasize the fact that it's nothing, zero, absolutely nothing at all. I can see no reason whatsoever why we need a new TV. I just bought this one a year ago. So I see no reason whatsoever, zero, why we need a new TV. So whatsoever means absolutely not, no, zero.
And I see no reason whatsoever why we shouldn't stop here, because I think we've covered most of the important points. But before we go out the door, we'll just go back quickly and remind you of the words we've covered today. So, whatever, anything at all, it doesn't matter what. Whichever, anyone at all, it doesn't matter which.
Whenever, any time at all, it doesn't matter when. Or wherever, any place at all, it doesn't matter where.
However, any way at all, or it doesn't matter how.
And whoever, any person at all, it doesn't matter who.
Whosever as a possessive, belonging to any person at all.
We also mentioned the slightly archaic word whosoever, an archaic version of whoever. The type of word you might find in the Bible is whosoever.
And we can use these words as emphasis. For example, Reza, whatever are you doing?
Or however will you manage to live on such a small salary?
We can use these for sarcasm and annoyance for a typical teenager. For example, when a teenager is told to do something and they answer, yeah, whatever.
And the final word we looked at was whatsoever, to mean emphatically no, negative, or zero, nothing. Like, he seems to have no idea whatsoever. Zero.
We hope this has been useful for you, and please try and practice some of these next time you're writing an email or speaking in English. Try to use these words in conversation. But now it's your turn to practice your English. We'd love to hear from you because we really enjoy getting your voice messages. You can leave a voice message by going to speakpipe.com, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast, or you can reach us on email. You can send me an email. I'm Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com, or to reach Reza, send your emails to belfastreza, Reza, at gmail.com.
We would also advise you to have a look at the online store for interesting publications that will further help you with your English. So have a look at store, that's STORE, store.mansioningles.net.
How can we possibly leave without saying a very warm thank you to all of our wonderful Patreon supporters? We have a group of people who are donating as little as $1.20 per month. That's including VAT, value-added tax. Of course, you are more than welcome to donate more. And by doing that, you get instant access to recent transcriptions of this podcast so that you can follow along with the text and understand every single word, however small it may be. Go to patreon.com for more information. That's patreon.com/Ingles podcast. We're not sure what we're speaking about next week, but there will be a podcast next week. And if you enjoyed this week's podcast, please tell your friends so that more people can listen to our podcast. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.